Social justice, 1, 2, 3. Woo, woo. I wanna be PC. Woo, woo. It's just the way to be for me and you. Woo, woo. Your hateful slurs are through. Woo, woo.
I call woo woo on you.
Woo, woo. We'll fight until you're PC black and blue.
Woo woo.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's been an interesting week in comics. We've had the reveal of John Kent coming out as bisexual. We've had some really bad stuff going on in DC Comics. I highlighted it on social media a few times, hit on it a little bit with Josh yesterday and this week in Batman. And there's absolutely a fundamental misunderstanding about people who want to start claiming things as I'm woke, this is woke kind of thing. And one of these was out there is just, one of the best examples I've ever seen. It's from a man named, I've never heard of this guy. His name's Oliver Willis. He's a senior writer at the American Independent who credit themselves as the #1 digital platform for progressive news, reaching millions of people each month. And he also previously worked at Media Matters. And he put out a tweet because apparently the idea is that John Kent is woke now because he's bisexual. John Kent, being bisexual does not make one woke. Being woke is defined by your actions, the way you treat people. And there are certainly, I would say, a vast majority of LGBTQ plus community aren't woke. I think they're just normal people like the rest of us. What is it? The silent majority, the 2/3 sitting in the middle going, this is all bullshit. That's where a vast majority of the LGBTQ community, but they want to, this guy, Oliver Willis, has got a claim, which him being, people are fighting against John Kent being bisexual because it makes him woke. Now, that's not what it is. And of course, he has to go out with this tweet where he's claiming that Superman has always been woke. I always love these. Comic books have always been political. These heroes were always super woke. And in his tweet, he writes, in Action Comics #1, Superman stopped a wrongful government execution, beat up a spousal abuser, and stopped government corruption from outside interest. But some people would have you believe Superman just went woke in 2021. This is absolutely ridiculous. Fighting evil and tyranny to protect the innocent isn't a woke cause or that isn't part of woke culture. That is part of Western culture. That's being a good person, like fighting to stop a wrongful execution and someone beating up their spouse. That's what good people do. It doesn't matter if you're woke. It doesn't matter if you're conservative. It doesn't matter if you're alt-right. You could be whatever title people have put on you or you put on yourself. If you oppose those things, you're just a good person. And that goes across the spectrum. There isn't a group out there that get to say, we are the only group that opposes wrongful execution. We're the only group that thinks spousal abuse is wrong. Everybody knows that's wrong. That is not woke. But of course, lame-ass hipsters now want to claim that Superman was always woke because history always started when this entire generation of douchebags were born, essentially. And now they got to go back and reframe everything as to anything good that was ever out there inherently supported all of their causes now, because that's just the way it always was. And then anything that they can't reclassify or reimagine in their own image was always evil. It must be destroyed. And these are the kind of actions that people actually classify as being woke. And a lot of the things that are part of woke culture that people have an issue with. Nobody gets to claim stopping wrongful execution or spousal abuse is a clearly defined principle of their side. That shit goes across the board. Everyone knows these things are wrong. Even the people perpetrating this stuff knows what they're doing is wrong because you were taught these things since you were a child. These things go across the spectrum. Now, as far as fighting corruption, as far as the government is concerned, I think we could all learn a thing or two from Superman in Action Comics #1. So many people, and this also goes across the spectrum, whether it's your far right, far left, conservative leaning, progressive leaning, liberal leaning, in the center. There are far too many people that are willing to turn a blind eye when it's their candidate or their tribe that the corruption is actually benefiting, if it's working out in their favor. People are far too eager to go out there and ridicule and perpetuate lies to continue corruption that actually works in their favor. And that is absolutely true. That's why me personally, I hate both major political parties in the United States equally. Because they're always principled until it's time to do something that goes against their principles. And that's just the way politics in America are. That one goes across the line as well. We could all be better when it comes to fighting corruption as far as the government's concerned, if you ask me. People oppose woke culture for a lot of reasons. I did a video on this not too long ago, and there are studies. And a vast, overwhelming majority of people, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, income status, oppose woke culture. It's something like 80% almost across the board, or you could call it political correctness. There's a lot of different terms for this. There's only one group, one tribe that overwhelmingly supports it. And it's about 8% of all Americans. And the overwhelming minority are people that support woke culture and what is happening with woke culture. And the reason they don't support woke culture is because it is weaponized cancel culture as a means to silence public discourse, stamp out freedom of speech and expression. Now you say, Wes, there are people that are outside of woke culture that have done that as well. Yes. But nobody's done it quite as emphatically, in my opinion, in modern day than the wokesters. Now you go, well, what about the 80s? We're not in the 80s anymore. That was 40 years ago. The crazies that were burning rock albums and picketing outside of the Last Temptation of Jesus Christ, for the most part, have calmed down and said, why don't we just all live together and, respect each other's boundaries and see how everything goes? That silent majority that's sitting in the 2/3, right? People are opposed to being talked down to by an entire generation that thinks that history started the day that they were born. That somehow, because they had access to the internet, believes that they are the smartest, like most well brought up generation that needs to be leaders at the age of like 20 years old. This generation strives for nothing more than be able to claim that they are the most marginalized person in the history of the world. That's why they sit there and they rack and stack people. Like, you're not a person. You're not defined by your actions. You're not defined by the things that you have done, the skill sets that you've had, the places you've traveled, the friends that you've made. You are defined by your characteristics, by your skin color, by your religion, by your political beliefs, and whatever else that they can use to rack and stack, your class and all these things. And that way they can do this, you get put on this spectrum, right? The marginalized spectrum. Who could be the most marginalized person in the world? You have an entire generation, the woke generation, that's all they strive for, is to be the most, put down people in the history of the world. Nobody likes that stuff. I define people by their actions and who they are. That's why I don't support cancel culture for the most part. I support freedom of speech. I support freedom of expression. People can say things that I don't like. I can criticize them, but I don't want those people canceled. I've never called for someone to be fired over their political beliefs or something that they've said. I've said that this behavior should be addressed, and whatever their employer decides to do with that about it is up to them. And if the employer decides not to do anything, that's on them too. If you're driving your own customers away, that's on you. All I can do is point out what's wrong. People are also tired of this generation. And it's not just one generation. It's mostly one generation, but it's certainly the boundaries go outside. There are people that have been adopted into it, or people that, brought this culture along. They will change their principles on a dime, do a 180 if it serves their best interest for the outrage of the day. I'm so tired. It's beyond frustrating. And the worst part is you can't point this stuff out. You can't shame woke people about the fact that they have no principles. They're 100% aware of it. Their only principle is to be outraged about whatever it is that's upsetting them and whoever that they can cancel and talking down to people. I could go on and on about all these things that really do define what woke culture is, that apparently Oliver Willis, senior writer at American Independent, has no idea. He thinks the reason people don't like woke culture is because they're fighting executions and spousal abuse and corruption. Get out of here. Because they have this weird glory complex. They think that they're all superheroes. But you're not. You're infallible. You're fallible just like every other person on this world. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. And like I said, we go on this forever. Feel free to name on whatever it is that you oppose about woke culture in the comment section, or if you're in favor of it, let us know why. Tell me why woke culture is necessary, why these actions and this attitude is necessary to make things better. Now, as far as Superman goes, as I talked about earlier, John Kent isn't a woke character because he's bisexual. Your sexual orientation does not define whether you're someone that is part of woke culture. Now, Tom Taylor is certainly a part of the woke culture because he believes he's the great white savior of comics and must change characters to fit his sensibilities and not service the actual characters. Now, I talked about that yesterday in my video about DC Comics pushing an agenda. Well, not yesterday, 2 days ago, about DC Comics pushing an agenda. And I went into that in depth. I'm not going to go over his words again, but I've certainly defined that. And you can definitely, if you want to say Tom Taylor is woke, yes, he is, in the worst possible way. As far as the character John Kent, the new Superman, yes, he is woke. And like I said, it's not because he's bisexual, not because of sexual orientation. He's woke because he no longer fights for truth, justice, and the American way. He specifically told his father, Clark Kent, that he never did enough. The Man of Steel, who's literally saved the entire planet too many times to actually comprehend or count, is a failure, according to John Kent, from the words, obviously these are Tom Taylor's words, he's not the creator, John Kent. This is the character that he's morphed him into. Because Superman, Clark Kent, never fought global warming, demanded a living wage from corporations or government. He never bent public will using his own personal power, which is very great, to his personal beliefs on social issues. Clark Kent just fought and saved people, no matter their race, gender, class, religion, no matter any of those traits. He saw an injustice, and he went out there and saved people. And that's who Clark Kent was. And that is a failure in the eyes of Tom Taylor and people that support woke culture. And that's why the character needs to change. Clark Kent was never woke. He wasn't woke in Action Comics #1. He wasn't woke in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2010s, and he's not woke today. And that's why DC Comics literally has to jettison the character off to another planet and let John Kent become the new Superman. Because the public, when I say the public, I don't just mean America. Everybody knows who Superman is and what he fights for. That he doesn't really take a side. He just fights injustice no matter what. Because that's who the character is. They would never accept a Clark Kent that was going out there and saying, you know what? I need to pressure governments to govern the way I believe personally about things. I need to go out there and use my sheer amounts of power to change the world and the way people live their lives, because that's tyrannical. That's fascist, right? People would never accept Clark Kent as fascist. And that's why you need a new Superman, John Kent, to usher in this new age of DC Comics. DC Comics are no longer about hope aspirational heroes or escapism. DC Comics are about propaganda, cultural assimilation from their corporate masters, and tearing down every traditional hero that made the company what it is. Because these heroes, in their eyes, what they represent, what they stand for, and what they mean to people are no longer relevant and are, quite frankly, dangerous. It is dangerous to have a character like Clark Kent in the DC Comics universe because of what he stands for and the fact that he will help anybody, regardless of their situation, because he doesn't believe that way. And he would never force anyone to live their life on his terms. So now you need a new Superman, you need a new Batman, you need a new Aquaman. All of DC's heroes need to be remade in the new image of DC Comics and woke culture. And if they can't be remade in this new image and this new agenda that they want to push, the characters must be jettisoned. Batman leaving Gotham. Superman leaving Earth. Diana Prince just died. I guess she came back. Aquaman giving up the mantle of Aquaman so he can be a stay-at-home dad. Hey, I'm a stay-at-home dad, but I don't have the power to talk to fish. I'm not the ruler of Atlantis. I'm not actually a superhero. But he's given up his ability to help the world and save people because he needs to move out of the way for a new hero that represents what DC Comics represents now. People can keep using these mantras that comics were always political, that Superman was always woke. He was the most woke hero in the world from day one. They can keep pushing these ideas, keep saying these mantras. They've been bullshit from the first time they said them, and they're just as bullshit today. The proof is in their actions. They've tried to make you believe all this crap. They try to make fans believe this. Not only comic book fans, but, you know, obviously comic books, go outside of just the little niche, community that we have here. They've tried to make other people believe this stuff. It's always pushed away. It's never accepted. That's the big problem. People won't accept these things. That's why they have to get rid of these heroes. You have an entire generation of people, writers within Hollywood, comics, whatever, that they think history started the moment that they were born, that everything before it doesn't matter. It must have been evil if it doesn't conform to their own personal beliefs. That's why they have no scope. They have no idea that things outside of wherever they live are different. There are different cultures that are in the world that don't believe what they believe. That there are literally cultures out there that vehemently oppose freedoms based on race, gender, sexuality. And they will go out there and support regimes like that. As long as they can make a point, they can switch on that dime and oppose Western culture because they need to change it. It's the weirdest thing that you'll ever see. There's an entire generation of people that are unprincipled. And a lot of them do fall under this woke culture, in my opinion. They will take and revise everything that they can steal in their own image, and they will burn everything else to the ground as soon as they can. We've seen that. And that is why people oppose woke culture. Action Comics #1 has nothing to do with Superman being a woke character. That has everything to do with Superman being an aspirational hero. Certainly the character has changed phenomenally over the years and became a much greater representation of who he could be in the end. And I would think by the 60s, you really got a good feel for what Superman was or is. But these things, these all, you have to rewrite history. It's very frustrating. And you have people that sit there and think that this guy is making a good point when he's making a complete ass of himself. Oliver Willis, senior writer at the American Independent, who wouldn't know woke culture and what people are actually opposing about it, if you explained it to him. Superman isn't woke. Clark Kent isn't woke. John Kent has been transformed into a woke character because of Tom Taylor. And he's certainly not woke because he's a bisexual character now. He's woke because of all the things that Tom Taylor's been doing in the pages of Superman, Son of Kal-El, preceding this, and the way that he views the world, the way that he's talked down to Clark Kent and said, you never did anything. You never made a meaningful change because you didn't go out there and change the world and make people live on your terms. And that's what woke people want. They want all of us to live our lives on their terms. And that's why people hate it.